Memory depends on a region of the brain called dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It's very important. That keeps track of the events in a certain sequence. If there is a damage to that area, then you can't keep track of events. You see, you can't make a cup of tea because you need to have certain steps to make a cup of tea, or you will misstep it. You see, you will do something wrong before the other. And then you make the decision about the action. And of course, this verbal and visual, the left hemisphere is dominant for verbal processing, and the right hemisphere is dominant for visuospatial processing, imaging. And then it has a lot of different kinds of memories are there. They feed into that. So even a single conscious moment is very, very complex, very complex. Then in my book I talked about this, what I call the black box of mind. And all these signals are coming from outside, world or jagat or environment, energy, matter, information. And this blue area is the field of working memory. And as I told you, that up to 7 plus or minus 2 events can at one time be in your working memory, out of which whatever you pay attention to becomes lighted, becomes very prominent, like this event, you see. And then this is being fed by the context of what's going on, what happened before, also the procedural memory and the residual, this is long-term memory. And there is this vichar chakra or the thinking which goes on like what time it is and things like that. We start thinking about, or we start talking about it. And this vichar chakra again feeds into the working memory and can clutter the working memory. There is a good Zen story some of you may have known. This student came to the teacher, the sage, for the tea. And the sage prepared the tea and put a cup and started pouring the tea in the student's cup. And the student was watching, and 3/4 of the full, and it became full, and he continued pouring, and it started coming to the saucer, and the student got upset. He said, "What are you doing? This is all full. It's spilling out." He said, "That's how your mind is. It is so cluttered with so many useless things, unnecessary things, that you can't really receive anything that I'm telling you. I'm trying to teach you. How can I teach you emptiness if it is so full all the time and you don't know how to stop, how to pause?" So that was simple. So we have to learn to let things go and be present in the moment. Pay full attention to the present moment. What I call presence. Presence means present-mindedness. I wrote a book, my first book was on presence, the key to mental excellence. That was my first book. And that's a great skill we all need to learn. You see, it's too easy to be absent-minded, too easy to get carried away and be mindless, too easy. So you have to remind ourselves to come back to the present moment, because the truth, the reality is in the present moment. And there is a lot to learn. In fact, the present moment is the infinite, you see. Now, in Vedanta or Vedic literature, this is the general model you can see. World or Prakriti, body or Deha, mind, Antarendriya, ego or Aham, being or Atman, and reality or Brahman. So there are embedded, like the babushka dolls, one inside the other, you see. It's a very complex organization. But it all works together. It all works out as a single entity. It depends on where you stand. See this yellow circle. If you stand there most of the time, that's the ego. Then what you see and experience is I, me, mine. my body, my mind, my ego, my everything, you see, and the world in front. But if you can step behind and be the being or the Atman, the I amness, the universality, then you can appreciate a lot more. And then if you can step behind that, then you are one with everything that is. But one of the great skills we need to learn is to observe your own body, your own mind, and your own ego. Self-monitoring, you see. Like the great lesson Buddha had given, that he talked about vipassana or mindfulness. And he said, if you happen to take a long breath, know that you took a long breath. If you happen to take a short breath, know that you took a short breath. So whatever you are doing, be aware of that, aware of your body, mind and ego. And that's all really you can do. You can't be aware of Atman, because Atman is you. How can you be aware of Atman or the universe? So, but whatever phenomena that's happening, be aware of that, you see. This is the model I created. Again, ecosystemic view, like I in the middle, then the ego, me, mine, and then the mind with thoughts and images, feelings, intentions, and then the body with pleasure and pain, and then connection with the nature or the environment. We are continuously interacting. The very fact that we are breathing, we are interacting with the atmosphere continuously. We are not aware of it, but we are continuously interacting both at the physical level, mental level, emotional level, with all that is. And this organism is a self-organizing system, Swarachita, like an organized vortex in the ocean of existential energy, matter and information. And dissipative structure, this word is from physics, that dissipative structure, dissipative process. It's a very dynamic process. It's continuously changing, at the same time it's staying what it is. And there are multiple dissipative processes that are embedded into each other. Our body has multiple processes like this. And then there is the natural biospheric system, where you have the solar energy, plants, photosynthesis, and then there are foxes, and then of course everybody faces death and degeneration, and then there are ants that live on that, and again this cycle, food cycle continues. But even in science now it is accepted that the whole thing works as a single system. The sun, moon, earth, biosphere, all the living organisms, everything works as a single system. And of course, a step further is to think that the whole universe works as a single system. In fact, there is a recent book, I got some of the diagrams from that, by Capra. Have you heard of Capra and Luisi? Capra wrote a famous book called Tao of Physics. I heard him in London one of the time. He's a great guy, very nice guy. And now he talks about what he calls the systems view of life. That each living being is a system in itself, and it has three components. One component is the autopoiesis. Autopoiesis means self-generating, that it generates its own energy, is self-organizing, self-coordinating. So autopoietic unit. Second is that this autopoietic unit interacts with its environment and also has cognition or information processing. That interaction creates certain information and experience. So in this sense, every living being processes some information. An ant processes information. That's why they build up ant colonies. They are very intelligent. You see, in their own world, they do fine. They do great. So does every animal. That's why they have survived. That's why they live and thrive. In their own little world, they do perfectly well with whatever sensory motor organs they have and whatever little brain they have. They do fine. Maybe we need to learn from them. So we won't have so many wars and destruction. Now here is another diagram that we are continuously exchanging energy, information, with the environment. There is a recent article about that the human body actually emits photons, continuously, depending on the metabolism of the body. If your metabolism is very high, then you are emitting more energy in terms of photon. While if you are in deep sleep, or if you are hypothyroid, for example, if your metabolism is low, then the emission is low. This may be the basis for the so-called aura in the older literature, yogic aura or the body aura, because of this emission from the human body. Of course, these studies have just started, so hopefully more and more work will be done. Yoga and cognition. Yoga is a skillful. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. It is the skill in action, skill in behavior, self-understanding, self-realization. It implies calming of the wandering mind, which constantly distorts individual experience. Our goal is to have an alert, attentive, calm, and clear mind, caring mind. Cognition, of course, is information processing. And cognition is a phenomenon of the global network. And the cognition can be explicit or implicit. Explicit means conscious, implicit means subconscious. Now, unfortunately, there is a lot of misunderstanding of yoga. Most of the common concept of yoga has become almost like a gymnastics. All they think of is this asanas and positions and complex positions and weird positions. And that's all they think of the yoga nowadays, unfortunately. And then all the fancy, gadgets and yoga mats and all kinds of business comes in picture. So whole thing gets distorted, And of course, it has become a big business. But that's a very small part of what yoga really is. Yoga has two aspects, what is called bahiranga, that means the outward aspect, and antaranga means the internal aspect. Outward aspect is yama, niyama, asana, pranayama and pratyahara. Internal aspect is dhyan, dharana and samadhi. So I'm going to focus more on the internal aspect. Yoga Sutra, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is a beautiful text. It's an amazing text with a lot of insight. These first three statements, he summarizes the whole thing. Yoga is self-resolution and emergence of mental activity. Then the self as subject abides in its own holistic nature. In all other states, the subject identifies itself with the ongoing mental activity. I have selected just a few of these sutras, which I'll share with you. And then I will go into the neuroscience aspect of it in the second half of the talk. Okay? The mental activity can be resolved by persistent self-discipline and a detached mental attitude of letting go. You have to let go of all experiences. I sometimes called it the experience of no experience. You see? Then serene and cheerful mind results from developing friendliness towards the happy, compassion for the suffering, happiness for the virtuous and tolerance for the vicious people. Now some of you have noticed that these are exact terms that Buddha used to teach his disciples. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Same words. Of course, Buddha also learned yoga. He had yogic teachers and He went through a lot of education and learning and on his own. But then he came up with these, with his own understanding, his own expressions, which are great, of course. Yoga is practice for reducing mental distress. He says that clearly. Is the mental suffering, and also for self-realization by samadhi, and egoless equanimity and an intuitive insight wisdom. Expertise in thought-freeness, mindful presence, or undistracted, calm and caring attentiveness leads to blissful self-realization. Beautiful. Then one develops a realistic, creative and intuitive awareness with many novel insights and wisdom. Your mind becomes a gold mine. You have gold and diamond just coming out of your mind and heart all the time. Great ideas. Amazing. You see, you become so creative, so intuitive. Now there are 5 different causes of stress. One is ignorance or inattentiveness, egoism, you see, attraction, repulsion, and then fear of death. We all have that, see, and that's a normal thing. But you have to slowly grow out of that, and you can. Meditation helps to reduce and resolve distressful mental activity and emotions. Then we can prevent future suffering and stress by meditation. Future mental suffering should be prevented. One should avoid self-identification with stressful transient events, you see. Although self as subject is pure awareness itself, it identifies itself with transient mental phenomena or experiences. Holistic communion of self as subject with holistic reality results in self-realization and self-mastery. Discretionary and incessant mindful presence is the means to overcome mental suffering. Then the clouding of self-consciousness diminishes. See, this cluttering, clouding of our mind diminishes. When that diminishes, it's like coming out of, like an aeroplane coming out of a huge storm cloud and seeing the clear blue sky, you see. With mindfulness and with meditation, it makes your mind fit, strong, healthy, confident, you know. Pratyahar is like letting go of the different experiences. And to repose, to recompose your mind. It's a question of being calm and composed. Now what is dharana? Dharana is like focusing on a particular place or event or a point. Dhyana means to be able to dwell on that continuously for a few minutes or longer time and not get distracted by this or that. And samadhi is you have become so good at it that you don't have to make any effort. You just stay in that state effortlessly. That is what Raman Maharshi calls abiding in the self. You live that way, you are that. And then he says, the silence is the most eloquent speech. And that silence is continuously dwelling, continuously emerging from your heart. That silent energy, that silent awareness. And that is very healing. That is the love that wells up. That is the care, compassion that wells up, that then influences others. You see? So you are fully alert, attentive, vigilant. At the same time, you are completely calm and clear, without any thought or without any distraction or without any unnecessary cluttering of your mind. And then you can know everything. Everything is potentially knowable. Whatever you decide to study, whatever you decide to do, whatever you decide to learn, you can. This also talks about the kshaнаkrama. Kshaнаkrama is that sequence. Like consciousness is a stream of events or stream of consciousness people talk about. A single conscious decision or a single conscious moment is 300 milliseconds. And in between two conscious moments, there is a relatively free period which is not engaged. That is what I call the pause. And that is what is called the Sutratma. Sutra means the thread. And there are beads on a necklace. So each bead is a conscious moment. But all those beads are put together, integrated by the thread. You see? And that thread is called the Sutratma. That's the sense of being. I'm the same person that I was when I was 5 years old. William James is like the father of American psychology. And he had great influence from Vivekananda and other Vedic philosophers. And he, in his writings, he created two types of selves. Self as subject and self as object. Which is interesting. It was a very clever way to do it. Self as object means the kind of self that you can observe, that you can experience, you can see. Like this body is self as object because I can see it. I can see myself in the mirror or touch myself and all that. But self as subject can never be seen. It can never be objectified. That is the ultimate subjectivity that we all have, which is that I-amness I talked about earlier. So that's a distinction most people accept in today's neuroscience and neuropsychology. Now, during meditation, this is what I call the sun within, Atma Surya, the 7S of the holistic source energy. We have to discover the source of our own mind, of our own ego. Still, relaxed body, silent speech and thought, serene, cheerful heart and feeling, sky-like receptive mind, self-effulgent energy, spontaneous primal awareness, and source primal being. Amazing stages that we all have to go through and learn from it. And then you discover the sun within, the soul.